Welcome back to Be My Guest. Joining me on the line right now is Ricki Stern, co-director of Knuckleball. It's a documentary that came out earlier this year about knuckleballers. Ricki, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I got to tell you, I went over a list of some of your previous documentaries which you and your partner have done, including one about Joan Rivers.
Yes.
How do you end up doing a documentary about knuckleballers? Because by their very nature, pitches are somewhat weird, but the guys who throw knuckleballers are just considered to be weird because of the arc and flow, or the lack thereof, of the pitch. So how did you come about to do a documentary about knuckleballers?
Well, we were sent the treatment of this documentary. Christine Schomer and Dan Kogan had written this about it. And so I think it's more what attracted us to the subject was that in many ways it is similar to a lot of the other films we've done, including Joan Rivers, in that our films are really about characters, about individuals who overcome obstacles with their talents. So for Joan Rivers, it's comedy. You know, that's how sort of she survives in life. And for these knuckleball pitchers, it's really sort of their last resort in order to stay in the game in the big league. And I think it's just coming up, pursuing something and persevering and not giving up. That's the universal message of the film that I think we all can relate to.
I think what's interesting about the knuckleballers, once you're able to, these pitchers are able to discover that pitch, they could probably go on a lot longer than the guys that throw heat, just because there isn't as much torque, there isn't as much kind of like physical torture on the arm. It's actually a more forgiving type of pitch, even though it's kind of a weird pitch and is very kind of difficult to learn how to throw.
Absolutely. I mean, when we were with Phil Necro in the film and spent some time with him, you know, he threw till he was 48, and Tim Wakefield, who retires during the filming of the film as well, was 45. So it is, you know, in an RA's case, I mean, he could have a whole, you know, another decade of pitching if he wanted, because it does allow you to throw a ball that's maybe not as wearing on your arm, but you know, the trick, as you said, is in mastering the knuckleball. Charlie Huff says it takes a day to learn how to throw it and a lifetime to master it for strikes.
Did they ever actually show you how to throw a knuckleball?
Yeah, they did. I mean, people, if you hang around knuckleballers, you can't help escape, you know, people coming up all the time, and certainly, you know, we were curious, but it's, I don't think it's, you know, people say like, oh, that, you know, I think the thing that people relate to is that it is really an everyman pitch. You don't have to be born with, you know, necessarily like brute strength, because it's a craftsmanship kind of a pitch. And so the idea is if you just dedicate yourself to it, you might be able to master it and play in the big leagues. So, you know, I would say we did not master it, though.
Yeah, but the funny thing about, at least insofar as R.A. Dickey is concerned, that here's a guy that bounced around the major leagues and eventually discovers, you know, masters the knuckleball, becomes a Cy Young Award winner, just got traded to the Blue Jays the other day. He's hit the jackpot, you know, in the financial sense of things, with this, like I said, this very funny pitch that has made him so attractive in terms of how aggressively the Toronto Blue Jays have gone after him.
That's right. I mean, I think he would say, you know, while he's successful and now for one of the first time really in his career, you know, massively financially successful, there was a lot of you know, committing and recommitting to this pitch because he wasn't always successful with it. And so it takes that sort of belief in yourself, and that's what's interesting about the knuckleball pitchers, is that they're guys who really had to kind of let go of ego in some regard. I'm not saying that all of them are ego-less, but, you know, you do have to acknowledge that you're going to throw this weird pitch that people are going to think is silly, and they're going to laugh, and, you know, they're not going to think it's as manly as a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, but it's their way to you know, success potentially.
So when you were offered the treatment and you looked at the story and decided you and your partner wanted to go ahead and do the story, when you went into the baseball world, you know, which could be somewhat insulated if you're not actually in it,
that is
how
true.
were they accepting of your desire to do the project?
Well, we went really directly to Tim Wakefield and R.A. Dickey, and they were very much on board from day one. They just said, yes, let's do this. So then we kind of worked backwards and went to Major League Baseball Productions, and they became a co-producer on it with us, which really opened a lot of doors. But you're correct. I mean, it is an insular world, and the people who are part of it have been a part of it forever, and they have their own language and and shorthand, and you have to just acknowledge that you're an outsider in that world, and from that perspective, I think you're open to different things that if you were part of that world, you would just take for granted. So I think also as Annie and I, two women making a film about male pro athletes. Sort of also gave us a different perspective than if we were just fans all the time and sort of knew all the ins and outs.
Did any of them think, wow, you would think enough of us that you'd want to do a documentary, about us that sure.
I think they were like, it's about time, because I think from where we came from with them was, we want to tell your story. And they really all have fascinating stories, because for them to get to the knuckleball, there was a lot of ups and downs and heartaches. So they ended up there. I mean, in Phil Niekro's case, his is different because he started out as a knuckleball pitcher. But I think they realized, and also this fraternity of knuckleball pitchers, this handful of guys that are still around who have thrown it, who really are the backbone for these pitchers who are still pitching today. I mean, they can't go to their pitching coach and say, what's off with my knuckleball? The pitching coach doesn't know. They can't go to their manager or teammates. They have to go to the handful of guys that are still around, like Charlie Hough and Phil Niekro, Tom Candiotti, and say, what am I doing? Can you watch some tape on me?
Do you consider yourself, you and your partner on this film, very, very fortunate, because I don't think the planets and the stars could have aligned any more perfect than they did right now? Because
yes, I guess that's true. People have asked us, like, are you excited for, when he was up for the Cy Young, what will it be if he gets it? I think we're just excited for him and for them individually. We're excited that Tim has retired and is happy to be retired. And but yeah, it was a spectacular year, but that's what happens in film sometimes. You cannot predict. You have to go in open-minded and then just let what happens inform your storytelling as you go.
Will it help you and your partner now as producers to have a film that potentially could become very successful commercially, if only because of the fact what's happening with R.A. Dickey is going to be causing a lot of people to want to learn more about him? And in fact, you have now a film that is about him and is about his life. And so, like I said, will it help you insofar as what you're doing and what you want to do going forward?
You never know, to be honest with you. I think it will help that he's now in the press, that will people will tune into, hopefully, Rent and tune into the movie. I think it will draw eyes to it. People who've never even heard of the knuckleball will go, oh, there's a film about it, hopefully. But you never know about the future success. But I'm hoping people see this movie. It's not just for the baseball fan, quite honestly. We've had a lot of people come up to us in the screenings and say, really wouldn't want to see a movie about baseball. It's really about their stories, about, their journeys. And I think, anyone can relate to that. So I'm hoping people will see it. It's on iTunes right now and coming out in the spring on DVD.
Before I talked to you, I talked to a sports journalist who's written a book about a National Hockey League coach who had a very interesting career, and tragically he died far too soon. And I said I recommended people buy the book because it really wasn't a book about hockey. It was a book about life. And I find that when people do stories like yourselves, it isn't about sports. Sports is kind of like maybe a thread that's part of the book, but really when you get into it, these are just people. Some have struggles, some do very well, and some it's a combination of all of that. And I think that's what you're telling me right now, is that you would like people to look at this film, again, because they're just people who happen to be doing something that has to do with sports, but it's really not a sports film per se.
Yeah, very much so. That's true. I mean, it is kind of a fun pitch to watch and to see batters' reactions and to hear from managers. You know, we interviewed a bunch of people. You know, they always have a funny anecdote about the pitch, so it's entertaining, but it really is about their life journey.
Do you guys have another project in the works right now?
We are doing film for ESPN on women journalists in the locker room, women who broke ground. And in fact, you know, the hockey and the Canadian hockey were one of the first teams to allow women in the locker room, which is kind of interesting. So it's more of a history of these women who broke ground. Although Annie and I spent a bunch of time in locker rooms making this film, so we appreciate, you know, the path that they paved ahead of us.
I'd recommend you talk to Christy Blatchford if you already haven't talked to her, because she was one of those pioneers. The woman I just spoke to right now, Rosie DiManno, the Toronto Star, she's another one of them. Yeah, I admire them, particularly in the world that I'm in the world of sports writing. The things that they have to overcome. I mean, they effectively have to be better than the guys doing the job. They have to ask better questions. They have to write better stories just to prove themselves. And having said that, there seems to be more and more women that are being given the opportunity now than ever before. And I don't know if that's because of, it could be a whole bunch of reasons, but there certainly is more and more that are having the opportunity to do it right now.
Yeah, that is true.
Anyway, thanks a lot for joining us this morning. Again, congratulations on the documentary. I think it's interesting. People should be watching this. The more and more people find out about Tim Wakefield and certainly about R.A. Dickey and his life beyond just about baseball. It's a fascinating story. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was Ricki Stern, co-director of the documentary Knuckleball. One of the more interesting documentaries that has a sports arc to it, but really is more than that. I recommend people looking at it, go out and see the film, get the film, however, just watch it. It's a very interesting story. And we'll be back right after this. I'll be talking about Sylvie Silver. She'll either be here in studio or she'll be here on the phone, or who knows what. You never know with Sylvie Silver. We'll be back right after this.
Holy night, holy night.